My name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to another indie book review. I'm getting 2 out in 1 week. This feels good. So today I am reviewing Once Stolen by DN Bryn. This is a companion book, I would say, to the author's previous work, Our Bloody Pearl. It takes place in the same world, and a couple characters from Our Bloody Pearl make a cameo in this one. I loved Our Bloody Pearl. It was one of my top books I've ever downloaded off of BookBub, and I raved about it so hard and for so long, I got myself on the author's review list, and I got an ARC. That's right, it hasn't been published yet. I am ahead of the game this time, but it will be coming out later this month, so I'm super happy about that. So this is a kind of steampunk-esque, at least it's taking place in the same steampunk world vibes as Our Bloody Pearl, but this one focuses more on this swamplands known as the Murk, and our protagonist is, well, the synopsis refers to him as a mer snake, and the book has a name for the species that I think is something like Boyana, that word. But I was reading and I was like, Naga. This is just a Naga, right? But like swamp-based Naga. Regardless, he has a lot of different names because, you know, Nagas, at least in here, do names differently. And I believe that he only gets the name Cacao after the chocolate bean partway through the story from our lovely, I don't know if you could call her the female protagonist when it's all from Cacao's point of view, but Tice. And it's great because they tell you how to pronounce her name like 20 times. It becomes a running joke that she's constantly trying to tell these people how to pronounce her name when it means nothing to them. Because, and I like this part, there is a lot of deafness in this, like, book and also the world building in general. Like, the Murk, the swamp setting of the book, is known for having a lot of, like, deaf people in it. A lot of them have learned to sense things, like the mer snake people have ridges on the top of their head that, like, they sense vibrations, so they don't really need to hear a lot. And signing is so common that basically everyone does it. Basically everyone will sign as they speak, and there are, like, multiple different dialects to denote if someone's from, like, the river people or the Murk people, and you can actually tell where they're from based on the way they sign things. And I thought that was really cool that it's just ubiquitous and it's not questioned and it's not a big deal, and it's really fun. DN Bryn has before made a big point of putting in disability and neurodivergence and different queer characters in Our Bloody Pearl, and I knew that there was going to be a lot more of that in this book, but also one of my favorite parts is that our mer snake Cacao is autistic. Now, the text itself doesn't specifically use the word autistic, but this is a fantasy world of mer snake people and magic rocks, so I give it a pass. However, both the synopsis says the word sensory disorder, I believe, and the author has specifically stated, both to me in emails and on social media, the character is autistic. And I don't recall exactly if DN Bryn is a member of that community, but from what I've read from books that are written by members of the community, it tracks. Cacao has issues with a lot of sensory things where certain things touching him, especially like the antagonist has these fishnet gloves, and Cacao is eternally, like, grossed out by the idea of those fishnet gloves touching him. Like, he hates it so much. Or when Tice, like, touches him lightly, like, his scales crawl. He hates it. But on top of that, the magic rocks of this world, known as ignates, do dampen or soothe or basically negate some of the worst effects of the sensory issues, and as a result, Cacao steals them constantly. And that's what I love about him as a morally great character, is his stealing genuinely hurts people. Like, he's been banished for stealing in a way that, like, actually hurt other people, but you also understand why he did it. So it's not just, I'm morally great because I want to be cool. But I really love that, and over the course of the story, you can kind of see him warring with, I don't want to be greedy, but I can't function without these, and how do I, you know, get them ethically, and how do I ignore the urge when it literally is the thing that makes me feel better, and it's great. Love the internal dialogue, love the internal world, but he tries to steal from the wrong person, this cartel leader, who also, as he tries to steal it, happens to have this other captive on board, a dancer woman named Tice, and they end up getting accidentally shackled together and running through the wilderness to outrun the cartel leader, but also because Tice's mother has this giant horde of Ignates and basically volunteers to give them to Cacao if he takes her there. And some other things do happen. I'm not going to spoil it because I liked the moment, but later on, speaking vaguely, they end up needing the Ignates for a life or death situation where they're on a deadline. I think that's vague enough. So it is basically an adventure romance. Of course it is. It's great. It's enemies to lovers. They start out totally like insulting each other constantly all the time. It's great. I don't actually usually like enemies to lovers, but the insults they came up with were awesome. And the whole point of this is that they see the world very differently. I believe the synopsis has something to the effect of what happens when the selfish and self-righteous are chained together, because Tice is very much the hero, to the extent that, like, she always wants to be the hero. She doesn't want other people helping her or saving her. And Cacao is not that at all. But of course, feelings develop, and it's great. Cacao's inner dialogue of, no, I don't like her. These feelings are something else. These feelings are not me liking her. Like, it's great. I always love some good angsty denial of feelings in a romance, and it is chef's kiss here. But in general, I really liked the side characters that develop and the chemistry between the two leads. Well, I guess, again, it's not really a lead because, again, it's single point of view, which most of the time I would get annoyed by. I usually prefer my romances to have dual perspectives. However, Cacao's perspective as being both autistic and deaf was so intriguing that, like, I wanted to see the world through his eyes, because I believe Tice is neither of those things, although she does sign. But also, you never felt like you lost anything looking through the eyes of a deaf protagonist. At no point was I like, oh gosh, I wish that he could hear the X, whatever. And even at one point, like, they're even listening to music, or Tice is listening to music, and it's like, I don't feel the lack. And it's very well written in that way, where it's a different form of living, but it's not a lesser form of living. And I appreciated that a lot. There is also, again, speaking vaguely, a different kind of disability that develops over the course of the story, very similar to Our Bloody Pearl. And I appreciated that as well. As has been stated before, disability is one of the few minority groups which you could enter at any point in your life. And I like that DN Bryn talks about that a lot, how people can become disabled later on in their lives and they still have to deal with all the fallout from that, even though they were completely able-bodied before. I appreciate that a lot. In general, I appreciate the author's work with weaving in these kind of queer characters and disabilities so much into the story that at no point does it feel like it was slapped on top. Like, the deafness of the community and the fact that signing is everywhere, and there are certain points where they're able to communicate without alerting the bad guys because they're signing to each other. Like, they're having full conversations with, like, a sleeping person in the room with them because they're signing. And there are things like, again, Cacao's autism is a defining feature of his personality without being the only feature, and it does inform a lot of his motives and gives a lot more nuance to his motives, so he's not generic, I need to be morally gray because I gotta be cool type of motives. And in general, I just really liked this book. And I kind of expected to, because I loved Our Bloody Pearl, and I loved this book, and I'm also really proud of myself for getting it out before the publication date. I don't do that very often anymore, but this one is definitely worth it, and I appreciate it a lot. So in case that wasn't succinct enough, I gave it 5 stars. Highly suggest this one, especially if you are looking for genre fiction, i.e. non-contemporary, non-literary fiction with disabled or neurodivergent protagonists. It's very nice. I always appreciate that. And I am also really excited to see what other areas of this world the author will reveal to us moving forward. This book does have an avenue open for a sequel should the author want to go down there. They do have like a new, let's call it a quest, at the end of this one to accomplish, and I'm pretty sure it's actually meant to, because one or two things are left majorly up in the air. But I also would not mind if we had a switch in perspective and Fishnet Gloves Dude was the protagonist of that book. I think that would be really cool. Regardless, highly suggest this book. Definitely different than a lot of fantasies that are around currently, but that's just the joy of indie books. Things can get even weird and weirder than normal, but that's great. Anyway, I am still basically closed. I did get 2 reviews out in 1 week, but I still have like 10 other books on my to review list, and I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch. So I need to get at least a few more of these videos out before I can say I'm back in the saddle. Regardless, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.